You are listening to negative programming constantly. I don't care what language it is. Even if you're Dominican, you're in a Dominican spot, bachata, dembow and shit like that, it speaks of a horrible reality, right? Bachata is constant breakups, cheating, and people doing each other dirty. That's all it is. Then dembow is constantly shitting on the other person, cheating, being single, and going crazy and blowing money and dumb shit like that. And doing the opposite sex dirty. Regardless if it's a girl singing or a guy singing, they're talking about doing the opposite sex dirty. So you don't want to live that reality. Hey, what's good, y'all? It's your bro with a God. Today, I'm talking about tracking your thoughts. On my last episode, I spoke about creating your happy ending, your finish line, and then creating that person, the way they act, walk, and talk, and all that, depicting them very specifically, so that way you can incorporate that into the way you are now in order to live that reality. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is tracking your thoughts. Y'all should have journals, y'all should have notebooks where y'all have daily conversations with yourselves, asking yourself what you desire, what outcomes you want, who do you want to be with, who do you like, why do you like them, what do you like about yourself, what do you want to change about yourself. Constantly speaking to yourself about those things, right? After some time, you're going to go back and you're going to read the things you write. And you'll see that there's a pattern to the things you write. There are certain things that you always want. There are certain things that you always ask for. There are certain things that you're always upset about. There are certain things that you always desire to feel and experience. So keeping track of your thoughts allows you to better identify those things. Also, it lets you know how connected you are to yourself and what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. The world you live in is all depending on the thoughts you have in your mind, you feel me? If you have evil thoughts, you live in an evil world. If you have good thoughts, you live in a good world. Your thoughts are what you feed into. What are you feeding? What are you paying attention to? That's what you're feeding. If you live in a sad world or something like that, you probably feed and give attention to things that describe sadness, whether it be sad music, sad TV shows, sad movies, sad people, people's dramas, people's conversation and stuff like that, right? That's why, like, let's say if you're ever around a person, whether it be a guy or a girl, and they're like solution oriented and they have like their mind on a certain wavelength, and you try to complain to them, like talk to them about your problems, you know, basically like vent to them, and they're being basically like dismissive of what you're venting about. It's not because they don't care about you or because they don't like you or whatever like that. Their mind is not programmed to feed into that. They probably already programmed themselves to feed into and pay attention to certain things. So they might just give you solutions and you might feel like they're just brushing you off, but no, they're giving you solutions so you can stop feeding into that and stop giving them your bullshit, you feel me? Because they don't want it. Now, I understand it's good to want to vent, but vent when you want answers. Don't just vent to unload and just because it makes you feel better. No, vent because you want answers, and be willing and able to receive those answers, because sometimes those answers are basically depicting you as wrong. And a lot of y'all don't want to be wrong. I get it. We all don't want to be wrong and shit like that, right? But sometimes it is you. Actually, all the times it is you. Because stress and everything is 100% your point of view. Now, it could have been you would have been programmed by somebody when you was unaware that you're being programmed, but still it falls on you. Once you're aware of your programming, it's on you to change your programming. If you know listening to certain kind of music has a certain effect on people and on reality, and you keep listening to that music just because you like it, it makes you feel good, you have good memories about it, you like singing along to it, you know the words and shit like that, then you're choosing whatever reality that music gives you. You're choosing that reality because you know it's not good. So you're choosing a not good reality. That's why I keep bringing to your attention the whole pertains to the opposite sex, music, movies, and all that shit, depicting the opposite sex as something you don't want the opposite sex to be. Ladies, if you don't want men to be cheaters or to cheat, stop watching and listening to shit about niggas cheating. Fellas, if you don't want girls being hoes and gold diggers and shit like that, then stop watching and listening to shit about girls being hoes and gold diggers. As long as you keep doing that, as long as you keep feeding into that, then guess what? You're gonna keep experiencing that. You want to feed into and pay attention to shit that you actually like, that you want to have. When you notice that, you'll see that a lot of the reality that you're experiencing is because of what you're watching and listening to. If you look at like the top 10 R&B songs and shit like that, 9 times out of 10, they're mostly about hurt shit, like being cheated on, cheating, being dumped, wanting your ex back, all types of toxic shit. So what happens is now we get into toxic relationships, or we have toxic thoughts pertaining to the opposite sex, because look at what the programming is doing. Now, let's say if you just listen to music that talks positive about the opposite sex, it might take some work at first to find those songs, to filter that out, but then eventually it's easy to find that. And now you're not so big on going to the most popping clubs, the most popping spots and shit like that, because it's playing music and shit like that that you don't really agree with, or you know when you go to a spot to mentally disagree. Now, if you work in the nightlife, you're a bartender, security guard, bouncer, promoter, manager, whatever like that, if you work in that atmosphere, you are listening to negative programming constantly. I don't care what language it is. Even if you're Dominican, you're in a Dominican spot, bachata, dembow and shit like that, it speaks of a horrible reality, right? Bachata is constant breakups, cheating, and people doing each other dirty. That's all it is. Then dembow is constantly shitting on the other person, cheating, being single, and going crazy and blowing money and dumb shit like that, and doing the opposite sex dirty. Regardless if it's a girl singing or a guy singing, they're talking about doing the opposite sex dirty. So you don't want to live that reality. Now, you could work your way into quitting that shit, or find a way to have control of the music that's being played and shit like that. But what you really should do is, when you're not at work, make sure you listen to things like podcasts, audiobooks, seminars, lectures, positive music, good vibes, good frequencies, you feel me? Talk to yourself, affirmations. You need more positive programming than negative programming. So let's say you're a bartender and you work a 6-hour shift, and in your 6-hour shift you constantly heard about killing, cheating, fucking other people, robbing people, all types of dumb dickhead shit, right? You constantly listen to that. Now, what you should do is like dedicate 6 hours every chance you get to positive programming to combat that. Find the audiobook, find a lecturer, speaker, find a TV show, find a musician that speaks on positive shit about love and all that shit. You know what I'm saying? That you like, that you could like vibe with. You know, listen to that over and over again. Combat that bad programming, because you need to fight back. It's a spiritual warfare as far as subliminal programming goes. And being aware of it is one thing, knowing how to fight back is another thing. You feel me? Now, I'm gonna give y'all 3 recommendations that I use for combating negative programming. And these are just people that I listen to because I'm at the point where I can understand what they're saying and it resonates with me. So this one person, he's really good for like people who are beginning and shit like that, especially if you come from a Christian or a religious background. And it's Reverend Ike. So you can YouTube Reverend Ike, look up Reverend Ike, look up his books and shit like that. He just translates the Bible a different way, and he speaks about mental science and shit. But he's very enthusiastic, uplifting. You know, he's a pastor, so he talks with a bit of drama and shit, a lot of energy. So he's somebody good to listen to, Reverend Ike. Another person is Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard, what he talks about is a bit heavy, and he speaks a little bit, you know, with less animation than Reverend Ike. So depending on where you're at in your awareness, Neville Goddard might be, you know, even better for you. Now, there's another one I listen to, Bashar, Bashar, Bashar. Now, Bashar, he's basically, it's a bald dude that like, he channels supposedly an alien from a higher dimension or some shit like that. And people ask him questions and the alien like speaks through him and answers those questions. It's a little bit crazy at first, you feel me? If you're not on that type of time or you don't have that kind of belief and shit. But, you know, just listen to it. once you trust yourself, you trust your gut, you trust your mind, and you're able to filter out what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, and you understand that the universe, nature, everything is organized and has some kind of order to it, you could kind of filter out certain voices. Whether you believe in aliens or not, I believe, and he already spoke about it too, that Bashar dude, that is just a higher version of that dude. He's able to channel his higher self. And you could tell this because when people ask him questions, he answers like this. He answers with energy. He answers with flow. He doesn't stutter. He doesn't say or nothing like that. It's just, and it's deep answers. You know what I'm saying? Shit that normal people, or just normal consciousness, right? Our brains, we have to think about and dissect. But you ask him a question and he flows right back with an answer. Quickly too, super quick. No matter how deep your question is, he flows his answer out and it usually answers your question. And as somebody who typically gets into those conversations and shit, I'll tell you one thing. Deep questions, deep answers and stuff like that make you think, or you slow down while you're answering. You gotta think before you speak and shit. You're gonna have some or whatever. Get into a flow state in the conversation, especially with deep topics about your soul, your mind, multi-dimensions, space, whatever. Like that shit is, you know, for the most part, not easy for everyone to do. To get into a state of flow like that takes a heavy dose of like meditation, practice. So the dude, he's really channeling something higher. I don't know if it's an alien or whatever it is, but it's definitely higher, whatever he's channeling. And listening to his answers, and if you practice what his answers say, depending on, you know, what programming you're on, it might sound too difficult for you to like buy into it. But if you practice what homie says, shit actually plays out. You feel me? And another thing about the truth is that the truth is usually consistent. You feel me? Neville Goddard, Reverend Ike, and Bashar are all different timelines. Neville Goddard was alive and like he did shit before Reverend Ike. Reverend Ike did shit and was alive before, you know, the Bashar dude became popping and shit like that. But they're all saying similar shit. Not the same exact shit, but similar shit. Then you also have Napoleon Hill. He speaks about something similar to it, but in a different type of terminology, a different point of view. Then you also have Earl Nightingale, Jim Rohn, Bob Proctor. All these dudes, even Tony Robbins, all these dudes speak on something similar. There's a similar aspect to everything they speak on. Now, as you listen to them, you'll be able to filter out. You might grow from listening to one dude and you move on to another one and stuff like that. Listen to him, then you listen to somebody else. It all depends on what message resonates with you at what time. I started my journey listening to Tony Robbins. Then I went from Tony Robbins to Bob Proctor, then Jim Rohn, Napoleon Hill. Then as I became more aware and shit like that, these other voices started speaking to me. So if you're watching this video and you've gotten this far into this video and you listen to everything I've recommended and shit, then it's probably time for you to research, not really research, but just look up the names I just said right on YouTube and listen to them, because you're probably ready to listen to them. Anyway, listen to these people and stuff like that, and listen to these messages will aid you in living the reality that you desire, which already exists, and it's just helping you shift into that reality from the reality you're in right now. But just, you know, keep in mind that programming is what programs your reality. Your thoughts program your reality. So keep track of your thoughts and speak to yourself daily. You know what I'm saying? That's why like the biggest obstacle with us to doing that is being busy. Because sometimes we feel like we're too busy. We give everybody else and everything else our time and energy. And then we don't give ourselves any time. Like we don't give ourselves 5, 10, 15 minutes to grab a notebook, grab a pen, and write and speak to ourselves and see how we feel, see how we want and stuff like that. So be open-minded, be open to these new ideas, try them out. Remember, the truth usually is the same message. The truth is consistent. So if you keep hearing the same message from different people and shit like that through different times, it's usually the truth. Lies usually lose to time. Time usually breaks apart all lies. All right? Anyways, your bro, the God. I'll catch y'all next time. 1.